insurance.
A homeowner's policy protects much more than just your house. It also protects you against claims from someone being hurt on your property. If a visitor is injured at your place, how much are you covered for? The smart thing to do is get the answer today.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Do you dread waiting in those long, inconvenient lines? That's why you won't find them at Bank Pacific. We're back to our pre-COVID Monday to Saturday hours with all of our branches open. You know, that where others put branches, we place roots thing. And if you don't want to come to the bank, we have MyCloud Banking through which you can go to the bank on any of your devices, including through our new cool mobile banking platform with remote capture so you can deposit checks from anywhere. Offline, online, no line. Bank Pacific. Where others put branches, we place roots and rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Republicans criticizing President Biden for tacitly endorsing a disputed energy pipeline from Russia while stopping construction of a domestic pipeline.
The Biden administration is waiving sanctions for the company building the Russian Nord Stream 2 pipeline and its top executives. The pipeline would bring Russian natural gas directly to Germany, bypassing Ukraine. Secretary of State Antony Blinken acknowledges the pipeline would weaken European energy security, though says the Biden administration is trying to rebuild the U.S. relationship with Germany, whose government supports the deal. Republicans and even some Democrats are criticizing the decision. Here's Kevin Book, the managing director of Clearview Energy Partners.
Building a gas pipeline across the Baltic Sea is exactly the sort of thing that the Biden administration is trying to stop at home.
Ukraine and Poland oppose the pipeline, and sources close to the matter say they were surprised by the administration's decision. At the State Department, Rich Edson, Fox News.
Apple's CEO Tim Cook will take the witness stand Friday to defend the company's iPhone App Store against charges that it has grown into an illegal monopoly. This in an antitrust case brought by Epic Games, the maker of the popular video game Fortnite, which claims the App Store has morphed into a price gouging scheme. A major cruise line planning to set sail again.
After suffering major setbacks from the pandemic, 3 Carnival Cruise Line brands, Princess, Holiday America, and Carnival, will be returning to service this summer with Alaska itineraries departing directly from Seattle. These round-trip cruises are available for guests who have received their final dose of the COVID-19 vaccine at least 14 days prior to the start of the cruise and have proof of vaccination. Crew vaccinations will be in accordance with CDC guidelines. Carnival says all guests will also be required to comply with health and safety protocols on the ship and when visiting ports. Hillary Barsky, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Leah Dunca from Security Title here with a little information about trusts. A trust is a legal entity capable of owning property. It can protect property from issues such as lawsuits or divorce and can be used to distribute property and avoid probate. Many trusts start as revocable but become irrevocable when the initial trustees die. Work with your estate planning attorney to see if a trust is a good fit for your family property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
All dads should own a Traeger. And this Father's Day, you can win a Traeger smoker grill for your dad and feast on flavorful wood-fire crafted meals. Cooked with a flip of a switch. Cook low and slow or high and fast with digital precision on your Traeger pellet grill. Purchase $35 or more in fuel at 76 Circle K and enter to win. Gas up today and join Circle K's Father's Day package giveaway. A Traeger smoker grill, a canopy, a cooler full of meat, and 2 cases of Bud or Bud Light are up for grabs only at Circle K. Conditions apply. Visit 76CircleKGuam.com.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's how I start the show every day, even today, even though it's my least favorite day of the week. We don't like Fridays around here because it means that we're going to go for 2 whole days with no tall tales. When I ring off at 1800 tonight, it's going to be 70 hours before we're back on the air again. As tough as it is on me, I know it's even tougher out there in you tailgaters, but we'll make it. We're going to make the best of today. All right, let's start out with Zemi Ikutni. And when I read today's editorial in the Daily News, I said, these guys didn't listen to Tall Tales yesterday. They missed the point. And here's what the Daily News says. Our view, strengthen tax break incentives for hotel developers. A measure being considered by lawmakers to extend an existing tax break program for hotel developers is a very good idea, but should offer stronger incentives. Guam's tourist industry was absolutely shattered. We didn't know that. We only just started effort to get the island's visitor industry restarted, and it will take a long time before it's close to pre-pandemic levels. Now, I want you to remember that sentence. It will take a long time before it's close to pre-pandemic levels. All right? Our visitor industry, meaning our hotel occupancy. It's more important than ever to provide incentives that make sense for the island to attract new investments with the aim of, and the style that these guys use. I'm going to read the sentence here. I got my blue pencil handy here. It's more important than ever to provide incentives that make sense for the island to attract new investments on Guam. Now, what do they put on Guam? Where are they writing about? Des Moines, Iowa? We should provide incentives for people to invest more money in Des Moines. But they do that all the time, like we don't know where we are. Attract new investments on Guam with making that happen faster. Senator James Moylan said investors are considering building new hotels on island and adding rooms to existing hotels. Moylan introduced the bill to extend an existing tax break program for hotel developers. Bill 66 would extend the existing special hotel qualifying certificate, making the tax break program available until the end of 2024. The program would grant a qualifying certificate, which must be approved by the governor, based on a recommendation from GITA that it's for new hotel construction or adding rooms to existing hotels. And then once again, it's like a news story. They lay out the size of the breaks, etc. Edward Camacho, GITA Business Development Manager, said prospective investors are concerned the 10% tax break isn't enough of incentive to add rooms to existing hotels, and the 3 years isn't enough time to get the projects going. His agency suggested 20% break on the cost of adding rooms and keeping the program in place for 10 more years. The pandemic, while devastating to Guam, has provided opportunities for investors to come to Guam and help rebuild the island's economy. We need to take advantage by offering the right incentives to developers to invest now in our economy. I just don't get it. I don't understand. It's almost the same as the old saw, go into the stock market, buy high, sell low, and make it up in volume.
How much did I pay for that advice?
Yeah. It's not quite that bad, but it's pretty close. So they start out by saying, it will take a long time before we're back to pre-pandemic levels. So this is a really good investor climate, right? Investors are thinking, you know, I'll come out and invest in Guam and build a hotel, and it might take me 2.5 or 3 years to build a hotel. And probably 2.5 or 3 years after that, I can actually get some guests for my hotel. This is not an investment climate out there, guys. James Woke Moylan. The only part of this makes it any sense is the idea of a tax break on existing hotels that want to add rooms.
That makes sense.
It makes sense. And they're not going to do something stupid. So I suspect if that were in place, there wouldn't be very many takers. But if there are, fine. So my point yesterday when I read the article, lawmakers proposed extending tax breaks for new hotels, and Jim Moylan said that I'm not exactly sure, but their idea for the purchase of that property was for hotel rooms. He wasn't exactly sure. Either you're sure or you're not sure.
What was the purpose of introducing such a bill then? Just in case?
Just in case, yeah. So I was somewhat critical of James Moylan's idea, which isn't hard because if you just turn your dial to critical when you're dealing with Moylan's bills, you'll be right 9 out of 10 bills, right? So if you want to do something, then give some kind of a tax break to the existing hotels that are having a really hard time of it, if they don't already have tax breaks. Perhaps some kind of a low-interest loan for those hotels that are really struggling with cash flow, something like that. But to say, my point yesterday was the current hotel, the hotels that we have here that are standing empty, we got about 9,000 hotel rooms, and probably 95% of them are standing empty. So I suspect they're really excited about seeing Jim Moylan trying to gin up some competition for them when there's no business at all. So if you want to do something for the hotels, Jim, do something for the people that are in business now and are having a really tough time of it. I don't know exactly what that could be. I'll say this. I went to the bar meeting, when was it, a week ago, and I went to the Hyatt, and it was the first time I'd been in the Hyatt, first time I'd been in any hotel for a long time. And the Hyatt is really looking sharp. They really remodeled it, and they really made it look nice. So maybe that's the kind of incentive that Gita should be providing. When the hotel is empty is the ideal time to remodel, and there may be some forward-thinking, capital-rich hotels that are thinking, we're going to look at this in the long haul, and we're going to remodel now if we can get some tax breaks that would help us. So much for the Daily News. No blue star for you guys today. And let's see, I probably got Rind Radicellus on the phone. No, it's not Rind Radicellus. It's none other than Drive-Through Jack, probably wanting to lobby for Gita tax breaks for any restaurant that has a drive-through capability. Correct, Jack?
Yeah, or a ready-made drive-through capability like Jerry Kitchen.
Like Jerry Kitchen, yeah.
Yeah, but I wanted to ask this question. I read the article about Moylan's bill. I mean, but yet there's no input or any discussion about the Airbnbs that we have in existence here. Why wasn't that? Aren't they stakeholders too, and whether or not a hotel goes up?
Well, if they're stakeholders, I'm not going to have any kind words for them. But go on, Jack.
Yeah, so we have Airbnbs according to the Clint Ridgell, expose that he did when he was a reporter. There's like over 400 of them here, and then according to testimony by one of the hotels, you're losing like tens of millions of dollars to these Airbnbs. So we we have a situation where we have an industry trying to start up, which is Airbnb, one more suited for things such as a pandemic. And then Jim Moylan throws his things about hotels when we have existing hotels already and no input from Airbnbs. I mean, we've got regulations for Airbnbs. We have tax structures for Airbnbs. We got a public health requirements for Airbnbs. And yet, when it comes to this GITA credit, it seems that the only people that are available for it or qualify for it that people don't need the qualifications. So I'm kind of like a lost at what how we're.
I've got a WhatsApp coming in from James Moylan. Drive through, Jack.
Okay.
A WhatsApp from James Moylan. James Moylan says, "I just say no to Airbnb." Good talking to you, Jack.
All right.
There we go. Drive through Jack, sticking up for Airbnb. Says they're stakeholders. I don't care much for that terminology. A stakeholder, a stakeholder. That's when you make a bet, right? The bettors don't hang on to the money. You give the money to a stakeholder. And the stakeholder is someone who will give the money to the person that wins the bet, right? Or it's someone that that helps you go hunting for Count Dracula. Because the only way that you can kill Count Dracula is to drive a wooden stake through his heart. So the stakeholder would be the guy holding the stake. Well, somebody else is standing with a mallet driving. I don't like that word.
There's high demand for those stakeholders.
Stakeholders, yeah. Let's try not to use.
There's also high turnover.
Yeah. Let's try not to use the word stakeholders here on Tall Tales. Okay, then let's go to the Post. And my 10 politically correct words. Here's what the Post says. Let's not just reopen. Let's find new and better ways to welcome the world. There's something Delegate Michael San Nicolas said during a conversation with Senator Jim Moylan and reporters Thursday morning that stood out. Here's a direct quote. "Jim, if you don't have a good idea, don't be introducing any bills." That's what Mike San Nicolas said. Not really. Okay, this is what San Nicolas said. Thursday morning, the reporters Thursday morning stood out. It echoes a point that has been raised by several in the private sector in the last few months, but hasn't been explored. When we talk about reopening and getting ready for bringing visitors back, I haven't seen much in the way of us actually doing things differently or doing things better. I think everyone's been talking about turning things back on. And turning things back on would be wonderful if we're able to move forward. He continued to discuss several initiatives presented by Moylan and Senator Tony Atta that aim to, quote, get Guam moving again. In the past few months, local leaders have talked about reopening the island, and what's necessary is we look at spurring the economy and finding new tourism niches and markets. I don't like that word either. There are all very necessary conversations. To Thursday's discussion point, however, thoughtful discussions can be held to figure out what we can improve upon. Other business people, including tour operators, have made similar notes urging the government to pause and create a plan that takes a wide-angle look at the island and how we do business with the world, then turn our gaze inward to see how we can do it better. I can't imagine the government doing something like that. I can't imagine private operators doing something like that. And moreover, ensure that everyone who plays a role in our tourism industry is heard, because they might have concerns or solutions that haven't been heard before. The lull in activity this past year was an opportunity to find ways to make improvements and rebrand ourselves in a way that helps us stand apart from Hawaii or even our brothers and sisters in the Northern Mariana Islands. On a smaller scale, we saw this take place at individual businesses or hotels. Pandemic-related restrictions forced some businesses to reconsider how they do business or interact with their customers. Some hotels took the respite from constant crowds to upgrade their rooms and renovate restaurants and lobbies in anticipation of what customers would need and want in a post-pandemic world. And though Guam has figuratively opened the door to tourists by changing quarantine requirements, we still have time to make those improvements as governments of our primary markets focus on the health of their citizens. Guam's government agencies, such as the Visitors Bureau and the GITA, as well as private sector partners, have an opportunity to audit tourism as well as what capabilities we have to build other industries. The focus should always be on what can be done to support jobs and create opportunities for our local community. I'd have never thought of that in a million years. With respect to tourism, we can bolster what's been working for our tourists and find ways to improve and enhance their experience and ditch what we can see doesn't work. San Nicolas noted that the efforts don't all have to be grandiose and instead can be something as simple as cultural performances at the airport to greet our visitors. Now, that would just drive me right back on the plane, to tell you the truth. When I come to the airport, there's just one thing I want at the airport: to get the hell out of there. I don't go there to be entertained. It's not something new necessarily, but it's not inconsistent. It's not been consistent. Rather, it's a special greeting reserved for only certain occasions. For now, whether Moylan's initiatives are the starting point or another set of initiatives are thought up, there are more conversations to be had that would help Guam put its best foot forward. We have an opportunity to make improvements. Specifically, we have time and we have hundreds of millions of dollars in federal money to help Guam improve the lives of its residents and its economy. Let's not squander this chance. We don't know when we'll get this much financial support again from the federal government, and we won't have the time to have this conversation as a community again or for much longer. We've been talking about reopening the island. Let's ensure that when tourists and potential business investors get here, they won't want to leave. Well, I got a couple of ideas myself. Let's make the island look a little bit better. You know, the road, it's not exactly Main Street for tourism, but the road between Dededo and Jigo at the boonies were so high and so thick you couldn't even see the guardrails. And when Public Works finally got around to taking that stuff out of there, they had to use chainsaws to do it. Yeah, because they were talking about, you know, plants growing in there that had trunks, Tongan with 3-inch trunks. They let it go that long, and it looked awful. Well, they did it, and now there's grass, you know, as tall as I am growing up. So who cleans up the roads? Nobody. So that would be a step in the right direction. It wouldn't cost that much. But let's make sure that our highways look clean and decent and not a lot of junk on them. That would be a start. Second thing we should do is we should have a beautification initiative on San Vitores Boulevard, all the way from the Hilton, all the way up to the junction with Marine Corps Drive on the other end. The Paradise Island part of San Vitores Boulevard is really something. You know, we compare it sometimes with Waikiki. My sense, it's better than Waikiki. Waikiki is, you know, if you didn't know, you could be in Chicago walking down Michigan Avenue. You don't know that If the ocean is around, it's too crowded, the buildings, a lot of tall buildings, etc. But we should go out of our way to really jazz up the rest of San Vittori's Boulevard, because that's our pocketbook. That's where we make our money. Something else we should do is, if you've ever been down to the Valley of the Latte down on Talafofo River, that is a really nice attraction. It's not just nice for Guam, but it's a nice attraction. And there's Hamamoto Gardens over in Santa Rita, and probably a couple of other places that I don't know of that would make nice tourist destinations. We ought to see what we could do. Signs on the highway, etc., include them in the brochures. And the same with Jeff's Pirates Cove. We have a lot of Korean tourists now. Koreans rent cars and drive around. You don't see Koreans following, 100 Koreans following somebody with a red flag. So, you know, same thing with Jeff's Pirates Cove, which is a real tourist attraction. So take what we've got and see what we could do to help these guys out. Fix up San Vittori's Boulevard. Fix up the highways. Don't give a lot of incentive to provide more competition for the hotels that are already struggling. Figure out some way to help the hotels that are already struggling. That's the end of my list for now. Next item. Okay, let's take a short break here, and I'll come back to the 10 politically correct but factually false words.
Hey, big news! Now you can listen to The Point on radio.com. And radio.com gives you so much more. Local news stations give you what's going on in your community. Get national news from CBS, CNN, or Fox News Radio. Take a break with one of the hundreds of music, sports, and talk stations. Love podcasts? Radio.com has thousands of true crime, comedy, kids and family podcasts, and more. Listen anytime, anywhere. On your PC, smart speakers, and a variety of connected devices. Or download the Radio.com app now from the App Store or Google Play.
Half a day, this is Honey. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more global markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated teams in Guam, Saipan, and on U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, so here we are. I'm up to number 10 on the 10 politically correct but factually false words and phrases to stop using immediately. This is something I picked up from a website called The Federalist. And they suggest to counter the left's lies, conservatives have to use words that accurately reflect the truth, not words that actively mean the opposite. And the first item on the list was mainstream media. Yeah, don't refer to the WAPO, New York Times, CNN, PMSNBC as mainstream media, because they're not. They don't reflect the mainstream at all. Don't use gender when you mean sex, because genders for languages like Latin, Spanish, Francais, etc. Sex is human beings. There are two of them, male and female. They are observable at birth. They are immutable. They do not change. They cannot be changed. So don't fall into the gender trap. This idea of referring to a single person as they, and so on. Sex reassignment survey. Per what I just said for number 2, sex is not assigned. It's a biological fact. It's not reassigned, and it can't be reassigned. Don't use democracy when you mean republic. The United States is a constitutional republic. I know the word democracy sounds so good and it feels so good in your mouth, and everybody wants to say, when they're criticizing something, they want to say, that's not democratic. Like the United States Senate is not democratic, etc. As an example, the Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston released an anti-racist agenda for medicine earlier this month that would provide, quote, preferential care based on race for Black and Latino patients, all in the name of anti-discrimination. So when you hear the word anti-discrimination, you know what anti means, you know what discrimination means. You put them together, and under the critical race theory definition, they mean exactly the opposite. They mean discrimination. Undocumented immigrant, just stick with illegal alien, will work just as well. Equity or quality when you mean the other. Equality and equity sound similar, but they're not the same. So when you hear people talking about inclusion, diversity, and equity, what they mean is that the government must make sure that whatever the undertaking is, not that everyone has a fair chance at the beginning, but that the results are equal at the end. In order to do that, you got to take away from some to give to others, and it goes right back to anti-discrimination. Like that hospital I just mentioned, they're providing equity to Black and Latino patients. Don't use the word cisgender, which some people have never heard of, so it won't be hard for them not to use it. But cisgender means a regular man, a man who is not a transgender something or other. So don't refer to yourself as a cisgender man. If you're a man, you're a man. If you're a woman, you're a woman. If you want to be transgender, you're on your own.
I'm not a cis, I'm a bro.
There you go. Yeah. Item number 10 on the list, pro-choice. Pro-choice is a euphemism to get around having to call yourself pro-abortion. But just as we don't use pro-choice to describe something, to describe supporting a person's decision to murder another, we shouldn't use it here. Abortion denies giving the unborn baby the choice to live. In that sense, it's violently anti-choice. This invasion of one's mind by ready-made phrases, Orwell said, can only be prevented if one is constantly on guard against them. Sloppy, inaccurate phrases will construct your thoughts for you, he says, and perform the important service of partially concealing your meaning even from yourself. Don't let corrupt media and politicians design your words and supplant your meaning. To win the culture debate, you better first define your terms. Words to live by. Okay, so from there, we can go to the card. I saw something here on the Facebook that I was going to repeat. Let's see. Talking about Jim Moylan's idea. This comes from Peter Santos. He'll probably repeat it later on. Jim will next incentivize sales of winter coats and snowboards. Makes a lot of sense. In case it snows, you know, you got to be ready. You got to be ready for anything.
Well, if you're not sure.
If you're not quite sure.
Quite sure.
That's a phrase. You know, going back to that article I just read, when you ask someone, what time is the plane arriving? And you get this for an answer, I'm not too sure. Well, you know or you don't know. There are not degrees of certainty.
Can we bring up maybe, maybe not?
Yeah, right. What time will the plane arrive? I'm not too sure. Yeah. Okay, so this is what we got on the card. We've got Tall Tales versus the Insular cases again. Biden versus unborn children. We've got AAPI versus the left. Critical race theory versus the United States Marine Corps. Yeah. Lassia Casil versus reality. David Lebowski versus MDs. and Bavacqua versus CNMI, and I should have added another item here, right up there with Casil, Bavacqua versus Reality. Okay, so starting out with Tall Tales versus the Insular cases. Robert Lynn said, "It's easier to believe a lie you've heard 1,000 times than a fact you just heard." Well, I'm going to give you the facts again, trying to correct 1,000 lies, starting out with this. When people say the insular cases are racist in the context of Resolution 56, they're not talking about the insular cases. They're talking about one insular case, Downs versus Bidwell. Downs versus Bidwell is not racist. The language that people like to pull out and cite as the basis for the racism is hypothetical and it's obiter dictum. It does not apply to Guam, the Philippines, Puerto Rico, or Cuba. Totally different. And people that trot that out, like Ann Parasatori, the American flies here, and so you'd think that American law applies. Well, here's what the Supreme Court, no, it's wrong. So make sure you understand that whole alien racist thing is not what people would want you to think it is. It's not an indication that court decided that case on the basis of racism. Downs versus Bidwell was a commercial case. It dealt with the importation of bananas from Puerto Rico to New York. And it said that the revenue clauses of the United States Constitution do not apply to Puerto Rico. The Constitution does not follow the flag. Now you're thinking, oh, that's awful. That's colonialism. It is indeed colonialism. And if you read Downs, you'll come away with the idea that the Spanish-American War was the beginning of the American Empire, the beginning of colonialism for America. That's where we are. So how does that affect us? Well, if Tina had her wish, does Tina have ruby slippers? I hope not.
If I was Ruby, I'd get them back.
Yeah, well, you remember how Tina got the ruby slippers when her house fell on the wicked witch of the West, right? So Tina is never going to be walking down the yellow brick road with her Resolution 56. But if she had the ruby slippers and could click her heels together and say, repeal the insular cases, it would bring about a worse catastrophe than the tornado that blew Tina to Oz, because the Constitution would apply to Guam of its own force. And that would mean no more Section 30 money, no more mirror image, no more mirror image of the federal tax structure here. We would be sending our income tax to the Treasury in Washington. No more duty-free shoppers, no more qualifying certificates, no more customs and quarantine at the ports. Not all of that stuff would be gone, because Tina obviously didn't read any of the insular cases, like she didn't read any of the Navy's 1899 to 1950 report when she used the beginning of her resolution to slander the United States Navy. But, of course, this is, and I don't know if Tina understands this or not, but this classic critical race theory. Critical race theory does this. It starts out with something that happened a long time ago, like the 1519 New York Times piece. And then it treats that as though it happened yesterday. And then it advances the theory that everything is divided up on race. There are oppressors and the oppressed. And these historic examples from over 100 years ago are an example of oppression. So the oppressed people, in our case here, that would be Chamorros, right, must rise up and combat the oppressors. And what the only thing the oppressors can do is fess up and provide equity. And I just defined equity to the oppressed. That's the name of the game. So Tina, perhaps is thinking that by beating up on the Navy and misquoting Downs, going before that hearing, the members of that committee will say, okay, well, let's re-examine SSI and we'll give that to Guam and we'll give them the highway funds and we'll take the cap off Medicaid, which are good things to do, but you don't need to go through that critical race theory charade in order to do it. As far as one observer is concerned, it's a huge step backwards. So the insular cases are not racist. They're not injurious to Guam. They haven't hurt us here in the island. They are a tremendous benefit for us. And the worst thing that could happen to us would be if the U.S. Supreme Court overruled Downs versus Bidwell, because then the Constitution would apply ex proprio vigere and we'd lose all of our good stuff. All right, so much for that. I'm gonna do this again on Monday. When you've heard the lie, and you're gonna keep hearing the lie, and when you hear the lie, get out your phone and mark an X on your scorecard as to who's telling the truth and who's lying, because anybody that advances that theory, anybody who's a supporter of Resolution 56 either doesn't know what he's doing or he's embracing the lie for what they think is their own benefit. All right, next item on the card is Biden versus unborn children. And this is, yeah, okay. Before I jump into the next item on the card, I've got somebody here who sometimes will say something and then repeat what he said for emphasis. Good afternoon, Pete.
Good afternoon, Uncle Bob. The only problem is that then, you're going to ruin it for the Savior.
That's true.
The Savior's not going to be able to save us anymore,
Uh-huh.
So, we just got to bite the bullet and let all those bad things happen to us so that our Savior, so the prophecy shall be fulfilled.
Right, Pete. Now, I want to clarify for our tailgaters, when you refer to the Savior, you're not referring to Jesus Christ. You're referring to Neil Weir, who has ambitions, right?
Yes, and I can understand when the hysterians misconstrue Downs versus Bidwell, but Neil's an attorney, and so shame on him for, being dishonest with this narrative that at least for me personally, he's the first person that I saw pushing this narrative.
Yeah. And he's
false narrative.
And pushing it pretty hard for his nonprofit. I agree, Pete.
Yeah.
So you and I are just going to have to keep banging away at it, right?
Well, we make a good team, like I said, Uncle Bob. All right.
Good talking to you,
Have a good
Pete.
weekend.
All right, sir. All right, Pete and repeat, saying the same thing.
Careful of that guilt by association, Pete.
Yeah, I know people downtown, I have this little routine when I ask people, how do you avoid the embarrassment when people ask you, why aren't you sponsoring Tall Tales? And the answer is, I don't want to be canceled. Yeah. Okay, so Biden versus the anti-aborts. And this is a column by my favorite, Jonathan Turley. And he says, 50 years ago, the Supreme Court heard the first arguments in Roe versus Wade, a case that would not only transform constitutional law, but political divisions in the U.S. Since then, and I really like him, but I wish he'd clean up his language. Since then, pro-life advocates have launched continuing challenges to try to dislodge the decision. Over the years, pro-choice groups, meaning pro-abortion groups, at times exaggerated the risk of a serious threat to Roe and its progeny. Now, however, reality has caught up to the hyperbole. The court just accepted review in a Mississippi case that could deliver a crippling or even lethal blow to Roe. Is it politically correct to say crippling anymore, Jose?
Yeah, and yes.
It is, because, you know, we used to say things like this. Do you know Lewis Harding? Oh, yeah, he's that.
You can't say handicapped anymore.
No, you can't say that. But one like this. Do you know Lewis Harding? Yeah, he's that crippled man that works at the lumber company. I don't think you could say that anymore. No. He is a person with disabilities.
Yeah, that's the word.
Yeah. All right. So the court accepted review in a Mississippi case that could deliver a crippling or even lethal blow to Roe. Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health Organization would seem on its face to be an incremental, not existential threat to Roe. Stopping to explain, there have been incremental diminishment of this whole abortion regime. Little piece here, a little piece there. But, you know, overruling Roe and going back to the pre-1973 law, that would be existential. So if Turley says that the Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health would seem on its face to be an incremental, not existential threat to Roe. The Mississippi legislature moved to ban abortions after 15 weeks, 7 weeks earlier than past laws passing constitutional muster. However, Dobbs is the long-awaited, quote, clean case, one that has a straight, unimpeded shot at the key controlling abortion case, Planned Parenthood versus Casey. The case which effectively reframed Roe around the key criteria that the Constitution forbids bans on abortion before a fetus has achieved viability. All right, time for a break, and I'm going to come back to Dobbs versus Jackson's versus Women's Health Organization.
Need to finish the job or start one the right way? Get the right stuff at East West Rental Center. You can switch to easy mode using industrial strength equipment. With years of experience helping builders, East West Rental gives you exactly what you need. Tools for landscaping, concrete, lifts, trucks, tables, tents, chairs, water blasters, excavators, forklifts, air compressors, and more. Call East West Rental Center at 646-1463 or visit them in Upper Tumont. Open Monday to Saturday from 7 to 5, Sundays 8 to 5.
Busy week? Mescla Bistro in Tumon has you covered. Let us take the worries out of your dinner meal planning. Check out our daily specials or enjoy some of your local favorites. Plus, receive a free kids meal with each adult dinner entree purchased Monday through Thursday. Call 969-2652 for more information or to make a reservation at the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon. And don't forget, Jack Larimer is live every Saturday night. Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
Okay, so here we are. So Dobbs could be a really big case. The court has long preferred off-ramps and nuanced decisions in abortion cases, a recognition of the political and social importance of Roe. Yet Dobbs is about as nuanced as a punch in the jaw. The case was accepted for one question only, whether all pre-viability prohibitions on elective abortions are unconstitutional. The court could have just as well asked whether we can gut Casey and return key choices over reproductive rights to the states. So, you know, I mentioned a couple of times when that the petition for cert had been on the rehearing, on the re-list several times. I think the Supreme Court justices had to consider it in 10 different conferences before they finally granted cert. And stopping here, the reason that they granted cert had to be because they wanted to overrule the Fifth Circuit in Mississippi and say the Mississippi law is constitutional or sort of constitutional or something like that. Otherwise, they would not have granted cert. And, of course, the smart guys out there saying, well, yeah, with Amy Coney Barrett on the court, well, yeah, you know, all those Republican justices on the court. Going on with Turley's article here, the court's acceptance of the case may reflect that it was finally has a stable majority to reverse major aspects of Casey. This comes a year after the justices fractured over Louisiana's limitations on abortion clinics. Boy, Turley, abortion clinics. In that case, Chief Justice John Roberts supplied the key vote in concurring with the results. Roberts' concurrence, however, was disquieting for many pro-choice advocates. He voted with the liberal justices only because Louisiana's law was virtually identical to a Texas law upheld earlier by the court, and he felt the record left little flexibility. So Roberts is a real stare decisis man. He's a very conservative justice, not willing to overrule established precedent very often. But Roberts went on to say, to criticize the precedent built on Casey, Planned Parenthood versus Casey, and stressed that, quote, no one asked the court to reassess the constitutional validity of the undue burden standard. And that's from Casey. So he's saying, hey, you guys out there, you want to file an appeal? Here's something that you might want to look for, put a hit in your petition for writ of certiorari. The biggest change, though, is that Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg was on the court then, and now Justice Amy Coney Barrett sits in place of the late Ginsburg. And I can't tell you how grateful I am for that. Now, it's not nice to speak of the ill, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. But Ruth Bader Ginsburg was the embodiment of the whole pro-abortion, feminist, whatever, not anti-American. You know, she told the people in South Africa that they could do a better job on their constitution than we did on ours. So she was idolized by the left, the notorious Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the notorious RBG. And no, I'm glad that Amy Coney Barrett is there, and not to whistle going past the graveyard. Everybody's got to die sooner or later, and she lasted a long, long time. As a law professor, Barrett wrote extensively and passionately on what she saw as the deep flaws in Roe and in Casey. Her nomination was the single greatest deliverable ever made by a president to pro-life voters. And who did the delivering? Donald Trump, with the able assistance of the Senate Majority Leader. Barrett's confirmation, Senator Amy Klobuchar. I got corrected on that yesterday, didn't I? Yeah. I like Klobuchar better. She's from Minnesota. You know, people from Minnesota, if you saw the movie Fargo, you know how people in Minnesota talk, right? All right. In Barrett's confirmation, Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota pressed Barrett on whether she viewed Roe in the same way as Brown versus Board of Ed as a super precedent. Barrett responded that Roe doesn't fall into that category. That led to a virtual audible gulp from pro-choice groups. None of that bodes well for pro-choice advocates who strongly oppose the acceptance of this case. Now, here's the reason I put this on the card. I've kind of covered most of this already, but this is the reason. The White House seems to be preparing for the worst case scenario. In response to the acceptance of Dobbs, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, the name tells you everything you need to know, said the president is committed to codifying Roe regardless of the outcome of the case. In other words, Biden wants to make Roe controlling by federal legislation rather than constitutional authority. And this guy, you know, you've heard me rant and rave about the fact that we don't have a federal government anymore. We have a national government. He has taken us farther in that direction in 100 days than anybody else did in a whole term, including FDR. So this idea of a federal law, you know, if it's federal, then you can't do anything about it. A federal law saying that a woman has a right to an abortion. I checked the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8. The Congress shall have power to, and then there are, let's see, 17 paragraphs that tell you what the Congress has the power to do. And I'll come back to that right after the big halftime show.
Is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Quiet in Gaza. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Hours after a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas took effect.
The Israeli Security Cabinet announced the agreement brokered by Egypt after a 3-hour meeting. The U.S. also an interested party calling for a quick end to the hostility. But this peace is tenuous at best. An Israeli statement says what happens next will be dictated not by the agreement, but the reality on the ground.
Fox's Gernal Scott, a spokesman for Hamas, warning their hands are on the trigger. President Biden says the U.S. will work with other countries and the United Nations on humanitarian relief in Gaza.
We will do this in full partnership with the Palestinian Authority, not Hamas, Authority, in a manner that does not permit Hamas to simply restock its military arsenal.
The president also said the U.S. will help Israel replenish its Iron Dome missile defense system. The president Thursday signed legislation to slow a dramatic rise in hate crimes against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders.
We cannot let the very foundation of this country continue to be eaten away like it has been in other moments in our history and happening again.
The new law directs the Justice Department to prioritize such hate crimes which have sparked during the pandemic. The Pentagon still searching for the source of suspected directed energy attacks.
U.S. officials say there are now 130 suspected victims, mostly CIA operatives and U.S. diplomats being treated for brain injuries, debilitating headaches, and vertigo. The targets, they believe, of a directed energy microwave weapon. Fox has confirmed 2 individuals working on the NSC during the Trump administration believe they were targeted in 2019 and in 2020 in the days following the election. The Russians have been working on mobile microwave weapons for years.
Fox's Jennifer Griffin. America is listening to Fox News.
Leah Dunca from Security Title here with a little information about trusts. A trust is a legal entity capable of owning property. It can protect property from issues such as lawsuits or divorce and can be used to distribute property and avoid probate. Many trusts start as revocable but become irrevocable when the initial trustees die. Work with your estate planning attorney to see if a trust is a good fit for your family property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
A homeowner's policy protects much more than just your house. It also protects you against claims from someone being hurt on your property. If a visitor is injured at your place, how much are you covered for? The smart thing to do is get the answer today.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
A second day of testimony yesterday in the Iowa trial of an illegal immigrant charged in the murder of a college student.
Prosecutors in the trial of Mexican national Christian Rivera say it was video surveillance cameras at a home in Brooklyn, Iowa, that first caught what appeared to be a jogger. In July of 2018, believed to be then missing 20-year-old college student Molly Tibbetts. The cameras then caught something else.
There was 14 vehicles seen on those cameras. 6 of those were the Malibu.
The car that Iowa DCI Special Agent Derek Reeson told jurors pointed to Rivera, who later led investigators to a cornfield and the body of Tibbetts. Rivera's pled not guilty to first-degree murder. The trial moved to Davenport. He's expected to last into next week. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
Another state is offering potential financial incentives for people to get the coronavirus vaccine.
Maryland's governor wants people to get their shot for a shot to win. Starting Tuesday, Governor Larry Hogan says the state lottery will award a $40,000 daily prize to a vaccinated resident.
We'll continue to do this every day for 40 straight days through July 3rd.
Culminating with a big payday on the 4th of July.
A grand prize of $400,000. So it's a total of $2 million in prize money for vaccinated Marylanders.
Maryland Lottery Director Gordon Medinica put the odds of winning a prize at 3 million to 1. Ohio and New York also rolled out lotteries to entice vaccine holdouts. Steve Rappaport, Fox News.
The European Space Agency presenting a plan to put satellites in orbit around the moon to help future moon missions. The agency would offer communications and navigation services to any country that wants to carry out lunar explorations. By relying on services provided from lunar orbit, the space agencies would be able to design their moon landers without the need for communications and navigation devices on board to free up space for other cargo. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Do you dread waiting in those long, inconvenient lines? That's why you won't find them at Bank Pacific. We're back to our pre-COVID Monday to Saturday hours with all of our branches open. You know, that where others put branches, we place roots thing. And if you don't want to come to the bank, we have My Cloud Banking through which you can go to the bank on any of your devices, including through our new cool mobile banking platform with remote capture so you can deposit checks from anywhere. Offline, online, no line. Bank Pacific. Where others put branches, we place roots and rooting for you. Member FDIC.
All dads should own a Traeger. And this Father's Day, you can win a Traeger smoker grill for your dad and feast on flavorful wood-fire crafted meals. Cooked with a flip of a switch. Cook low and slow or high and fast with digital precision on your Traeger pellet grill. Purchase $35 or more in fuel at 76 Circle K and enter to win. Gas up today and join Circle K's Father's Day package giveaway. A Traeger smoker grill, a canopy, a cooler full of meat, and 2 cases of Bud or Bud Light are up for grabs only at Circle K. Conditions apply. Visit 76CircleKGuam.com.
Busy week? Mezcla Bistro in Tumon has you covered. Let us take the worries out of your dinner meal planning. Check out our daily specials or enjoy some of your local favorites. Plus, receive a free kids meal with each adult dinner entree purchased Monday through Thursday. Call 969-2652 for more information or to make a reservation at the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon. And don't forget, Jack Larimer is live every Saturday night. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
There we go. Once again, another big halftime show on Tall Tales. And we are now in the last half of Tall Tales for this week. I've been working on what I've labeled in the card as Biden versus anti-abortionists. And a column here from my favorite columnist, Jonathan Turley, who lays out what's going on with the Supreme Court granting certiorari to hear a case called, what is the name of it? Yeah, I got it right here. Dobbs versus Jackson's Women Health Organization. It's a case out of Mississippi. And Supreme Court news is always interesting, but when Joe Biden comes forward, it really gets interesting because Biden wants to push through a federal statute that would protect abortion and abortionists. And I said, that's interesting, but I wonder how he would be able to do that under the Constitution, because I looked at Article 1, Section 8, which describes the powers of Congress, and there are 17 descriptions there, none of which deal with regulating abortion. Abortion is a classic matter that should be addressed to the power of the states. When the country was formed, we had 13 independent countries that delegated some of their sovereignty to a federal government to do things that the 13 weren't able to do quite as well on their own, or even trying to work together. Things like national defense, post office, post roads, etc. But the vast majority of things dealing with personal rights and persons in general were left to the states. The only time that the federal government actually dealt with the states on a day-to-day basis was at the post office. Other than that, most people never dealt with the federal government in the beginning. But of course, with creeping federalism, the national government got more and more power and the states less and less power, to now the national government is, Biden wants the national government to actually get involved with something as personal as childbirth. And regardless of how you feel about abortion, it just isn't federalism. It is a classic national government type operation. So here's what my friend Turley says about that. Biden wants to make Roe controlling by federal legislative rather than constitutional authority. It was a telling and ironic response. Roe was deemed a great victory because it removed abortion rights from legislative discretion by making it a constitutional imperative. Now Biden is planning to snatch away any legislative discretion given back to the states by preempting state laws on abortion. Before Roe, abortion was viewed as a core state issue that left policies to the voters of each state where it belongs. The Biden administration would effectively seize any legislative discretion and federalize abortion law. If it is a signature move for the Biden administration, which is becoming the most hostile to states' rights in modern history. Biden has shown little patience with the states adopting opposing policies in a variety of areas. For example, in the Wuhan virus relief bill, states were given billions of federal dollars with a key unprecedented catch. They had to promise not to cut taxes, even if the windfall of federal money left them with more money than they needed. Biden seeks to negate another Supreme Court decision through legislation. In 2018, the court delivered a blow to unions when it ruled that government employees could decline to pay union dues. So Biden wants to preempt states' right-to-work laws. Well, Congress has long passed major labor laws. The PRO Act would effectively take away the ability of states to make choices in this area. Now, he's not talking about, private companies. He's talking about government employee labor unions. And he's talking about the Janus case. 40 years ago, the Supreme Court said that government employee unions could charge members a fee for union services that didn't involve politics. And it was impossible to get a handle on it. So the Supreme Court, I think it was last year, overruled that and said you can't make it a condition of employment that teachers have to pay what are called service fees, fair share, union shop, etc. So that's what Biden wants to overrule. And once again, it should be a matter, it's within the power of the states to regulate the state's own employees. It's not a national issue. Then there is H.R. 1, a bill that would effectively federalize elections, including negating state identification law, redistricting rules, and a host of other limitations. Now, you remember Biden's major argument in favor of that was it was really a good legal argument. This is Jim Crow 2.0. A classic Tina technique. Just brand it with an unpalatable name. You don't have to know what it's about, but just give it, just associate it with something that's not, that's unpalatable, and then that is your argument. Just like the insular cases are racist. I never read them, but I know they're racist and therefore should be overruled.
Crying racism is so easy, even Biden can do it.
Yeah, and even Obama could do it without a teleprompter. In a widening array of areas, the Biden administration would achieve a national consensus by imposing a federal mandate on states. Some of the administration's expansive claims already are being challenged and could ultimately reach a Supreme Court with a majority of pro-federalism judges. What a wonderful thing. However, the effort to supplant states on abortion could prove the most difficult to sell to justices if they use Dobbs to return some discretion back to the states. There are obvious limits to the pro-choice values of the Biden administration. They clearly do not extend to state autonomy or authority. When it comes to the right to choose on key policies, from elections to unions to taxes to climate change to abortion, states would have fewer and fewer choices to make. They are left with the same freedom that automaker Henry Ford gave every customer to choose any color for his Model T, so long as it was black. In the next 2 years, many states are likely to object that they've been left with a type of Model T federalism in which they are free to choose any option, so long as it's Biden's. Yeah, good column, Jonathan. And I've been talking about this for 4 years, how we went from a federal government to a state government, as you were from a federal government to a national government, assisted by 50 administrative districts known as states. Okay, next on the card is AAPI versus the left. AAPI. Now, you probably haven't heard those initials before, AAPI, and you wonder, what in the heck does that mean? Well, this is the newest group of oppressed that the critical race theory folks, the identity politics people have come up with to broaden their base of oppressed people. AAPI stands for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. And if you are an Asian American or a Pacific Islander and you don't know it, you are oppressed.
There's a secret they're not telling you, though.
Yeah. Yeah. And I find this really amusing, living here, right here in the crossroads of Asia and the Pacific Islands, to lump those people together, Asians and Pacific Islanders, it's like saying, oh, we're going to have an affinity group here. We're going to only open this up to Spanish and Swedish people because they both start with S. So, it just doesn't make any sense at all. I got this from PJ Media, and this is what it says. It's time to bid farewell, and they use the term MSM, but, they haven't heard my rant. Mainstream media coverage of anti-Asian violence. You remember they were all over that for a while, anti-Asian violence. It was juicy while it lasted. The race baiters in the lefty media saw what they thought was an opportunity to bash Donald Trump, yet again by trying to link anti-Asian hate crimes. And by the way, Biden just signed an anti-Asian hate crime bill. Jim Moylan, just let it go. Yeah.
It's about time.
Yeah. And anti-Asian hate crimes to the former president's use of the phrase. They wanted to tie this to Trump's using the term China virus. And I suppose I'm guilty too because of my unwillingness to use COVID-19, and I always substitute Wuhan virus for it. Liberal news rushed and gushed to suggest that Trump's words had stirred up a bunch of white supremacists in MAGA hats driving pickup trucks with huge Dixie flags all the way from Georgia to San Francisco for the thrill of punching an elderly Asian woman. That's kind of how the left media phrased it. Yee-haw. Bad news for CNN. It turns out most of the attacks are not committed by toothless goobers, but by, are you ready for this? Black people. No! Yeah. No, you can't say that though. Some folks just aren't comfortable talking about that inconvenient truth, and that's not new. A 2008 survey in San Francisco found that 85% of strong-arm robberies against Asian women were committed by black men. The same article suggests the police weren't exactly eager to address the role of race in these attacks. 9 years and hundreds of attacks later, the bigwigs working for San Francisco Bay Area Rapid Transit refused to release videos of subway violence to, quote, avoid racial stereotyping of suspects. Just because most of the people in the video, that would be stereotyping, right?
Well, automatically know what the race is now.
Yeah. A leaked BART memo stated, disproportionate elevation of crimes on transit interfaces with local media in such a way to unfairly affect and characterize riders of color, leading to sweeping generalizations in media reports and a high level of racial insensitive commentary directed toward the district through our social media channels, email, and call centers. Yeah. San Francisco is a beehive of anti-Asian crime. Sorry, Asian people. Black crime will not be discussed in the news. Call it hashtag black privilege. Lefty news did succeed in making people think the recent anti-Asian violence was caused by redneck Trump supporters, to the point that an Asian man decided to rape a white woman in an act of revenge.
What?
Yeah, well, identity politics. That's what it's all about. Then came the videos where we could see the attackers. Oops. First, woman with hammer attacking an Asian woman. Second, man stabs 2 elderly Asian people. Third, 3 men attack elderly Asian man in laundromat. One news outlet hides the identity of the attackers and one does not. Now, these are videos, right? Next one, ABC News 7 in San Francisco showed a video of a man attacking an Asian person, but tried to hide his identity rather than show it to help have him arrested. So we don't want to show his face, to help the cops find him. Next one, man brutally stomps 61-year-old Asian man. Next one, man stomping elderly Asian woman in New York City. CNN blames Trump. Merrick Garland and New York City Mayor de Blasio don't mention the race of the attackers. San Francisco ABC News 10 blames Trump while showing 3 videos of black men attacking elderly Asians. CNN led the attempt to blame Trump for anti-Asian attacks until they realized who was doing the stomping. Project Veritas has undercover video of CNN's Charlie Chester. You remember that guy who said, who was putting the moves on a woman who was doing some undercover work, and it fessed up about what CNN was all about. Project Veritas undercover video of CNN's Charlie Chester talking about how CNN prefers to help Black Lives Matter rather than run stories about black on Asian violence. No surprise. This isn't the first time CNN has hidden black violence. In 2016, they edited a video of a young black woman calling for a race riot and pretended she was calling for peace. If only CNN and the liberal media cared enough about stopping all racial violence, not just the violence they think can lay on Donald Trump's shoulders. Well, there you go. I saw a lot of these videos and I said, I see what's going on here, but is anybody going to call it out? Is anybody going to blow the whistle?
And before anyone called it out also, I was starting to read these going, why do they keep telling us that the victim is Asian, but they never told us who the suspect was?
Never.
It was always omitted. Now we know why.
Now, as Paul Harvey would say, now you know the rest of the story. Okay, I got a couple of folks waiting in the green room here. And
take a break.
Time for the 7th inning stretch already, huh? So I'll tell you what, I'm going to do the 7th inning stretch. And then I'm going to put the usual suspects on the phone.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his smile team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his smile team.
They make smiles happen.
Hafide, this is Josh here at APO. Our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more global markets. As a responsible carrier, APO is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated teams in Guam, Saipan, and on U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit www.apo.com.
Here we are at Wrigley Field in Chicago for the 7th inning stretch. That means it's 2 more innings at Tall Tales today. And while I was strolling around Wrigley Field, I found a note from Bistra Rusinova Mendiola, who says, Washington got a real taste of what it feels to be in control. Now it will take a revolution to make them let go of the bone. Yeah, good call, Rusinova. Bistra Rusinova. All right, so the usual suspects, starting out with none other than Another Joe. Hello, Another Joe.
Hey, Uncle Bob. I'm sorry, what was that resolution you've been bringing up regarding the woke legislature and certain senators who you're very disappointed with? I forget, what was the resolution about?
You mean the Insular Cases resolution?
Yeah, that sounds like it.
Yeah, that's resolution 56.
56, there you go. So does that suggest they are for or against the military buildup?
Against.
They're against?
Against.
Hey, Uncle Bob, wasn't there this thing called the Action Pack? And wasn't that one of the 5 points supporting the military buildup?
Going into the last election, I guess when the election was over, the Action Pack packed up and left town.
So I guess they're only interested in the BPT tax. Yeah? All those other points were what, for show?
Something like that, yeah.
So, yeah, I was curious about it because they're very vocal and there's a lot of money spent. And I think you were saying it was kind of a waste of time and money because of the results.
Well, they endorsed 15 people, in a 15 horse race. He endorsed 15 people, and their picks didn't do all that well. So it was not a very good effort.
And now we're seeing with this resolution, right? The
effects. Yeah, what we need, other than me and repeat, we need to have a citizens group that comes out and calls these guys on their foolishness and their anti-military, anti-American, pro-identity group approach to legislation.
Which reminds me, Uncle Bob, the reason I called was I agree with you. I'm not really articulate about this, but it's like you and Jose were saying. There are attacks on elderly Asians, but the so-called media do not report who the attackers are unless it's someone white, because then it's convenient. They can say the white guy is bad, right?
Yeah.
but yeah, this organization, my first thought was these are old people, old Asians who are trying to find a way to have a movement. And maybe it's not the best way to have a movement, with this race identity thing. I'm just saying maybe they need to adjust, and I don't know how they can make this. I'm thinking like enough sort of thing, but I'm starting to get staged right now. Anyway, I just wish they would actually stop attacking Trump and start reporting the news and approach this in I know it sounds cliche, but fair and balanced way. There's something else I can't think of it right now. I got stage right, but I'll just say thanks for your time, Uncle Bob.
Yeah, well, what's going on here, Another Joe? I'll help you. What used to be reputable newspapers like the New York Times and Washington Post no longer report the news. They see their role as making the news by advocating and by picking and choosing. And like CNN, creating a whole new class of news, violence against Asian people. And it worked fine for them until they found out who was committing the violence, and then they let it go. Anyhow, see you on Monday, Another Joe.
Yep, thanks for your time, Uncle. I appreciate it.
All right. So
New York Times, all the news that's fit to print.
that's what they say.
All
yeah.
the news that's fixed to print.
Exactly. America's record, the record of America. Yeah. What a disappointment. Okay, now I go to the most dangerous man in the room. And Jose's on the phone, so he can't give me the right sound effect, Carl. Sorry about that.
No problem. I can hum it if you want. Yeah, I just want to call in to comment on this because I am concerned about this. You know, I grew up on Guam, and when I was in school, you know, my dad was Caucasian, so I'm kind of light complected, and I got my share of being called Howley and Honky. I got my share of that. Nothing really bad. I mean, I wasn't jumped by like 5 guys or something because I think I was kind of unintimidating.
You were unintimidating?
Back then.
Boy, you sure outgrew that.
But,
I think you told me you ran into somebody in a supermarket and we're chatting, and then you identified yourself, and the person you were talking to said something like, "That's all?"
Yeah. You're the most dangerous man in the... You don't look very dangerous.
Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, but my concern is, you know, that I have a son who is in the military. He's off island now. But at some point, he's going to move back. He might be in the Air National Guard. He might be in the, you know, in some other type of military group where he has to wear a uniform. He could be mistaken for, you know, a Caucasian. You know, even though he has Filipino blood, Chamorro blood, Swedish, German, you know, he's halo, you know, he's kind of a mutt just like me. But, you know, with my concern about what we see happening in the States, you know, attacks on white people and attacks now on Asians, because especially Asians, they tend to, they're a minority, but they're a minority that has done very well.
They've been more successful than Howleys in the States.
Yeah, per capita, their income level is higher than white people, and their acceptance of bank loans is higher than white people. So, you know, I'm kind of feeling like discriminated against, the white half of me anyway. But my concern is, you know, if my son comes back here to visit, comes back to live, and the agitators and the instigators have pumped so much hatred of white people into some people that they see my son walking around, and it just happens to be my son's lottery ticket up. And he gets
I got a suggestion for you, Carl.
Uh-huh.
Find a picture of Hope Cristobal and give it to your son, and tell him to be aware, be on the lookout. Be, you know, don't take any risks, and show him that clip of how hospitable Hope Cristobal was to Paul Zerzan.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? When the people hear that enough, what Hope Cristobal, that kind of poison that she's pouring into people's minds, and is being done in, you know, universities, including on our university, about how, you know, how horrible white people are. They're murderers, killers. You're a killer.
Colonizers.
Yeah, exactly. So that justifies harassment. That justifies physical abuse. That justifies something worse, because once you demonize a race, pretty much it's open season. You know, I'm not doing something wrong. I'm actually on the righteous side, you know, beating up these horrible white people.
It worked for Tina.
It's happened many times before.
Yeah.
But, you know, who would I blame? Of course I would blame the people that jumped my son, you know, 3 or 5 of them or whatever, if he was hospitalized or hopefully not worse. But I would also have to blame the instigators that are, you know, what do they call that? In the States, they have a name for the black leaders who instigate, you know, and
yeah, they have a name for it, Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton.
Yeah, the race hustlers.
Yeah.
And we have our own version here, you know, and you know, I've heard of a case, where some military guys were beat up with pipes, and I think they survived, but, at some point, it's just really going to ramp up even worse. And we have to pinpoint these instigators and these race baiters that are pumping this kind of stuff into the minds of people, especially young people that are so impressionable. So that's my concern, is that we're seeing that here on Guam, and we're going to see more of it. And the people need to be held accountable that are pushing this kind of hatred into people's minds. They can't just slink off, like in in high school, there's these people that, whisper into people's ears, hey, that guy over there, yeah, he said your girlfriend's ugly, and start a fight and then kind of slink off into the crowd and watch the chaos that they caused. We can't let people get away with that kind of stuff.
Well, I'm doing my best here on Tall Tales, Carl, and I appreciate your help. And, as soon as people find out the position of the most dangerous man on the island, I think we're heading in the right direction. So thanks a lot for helping out today, Carl.
Okay, Bob. I'll see you Monday.
Okay. All right, next item on the card, CRT versus USMC, United States Marine Corps, critical race theory. The U.S. Marine Corps marches down the road to hell. I got this from Red State. Yeah. The U.S. Marine Corps was the last redoubt in the battle for the soul of America, in my opinion. The guy that wrote this is Stu Svirk, C-V-R-K, Stu Svirk. The U.S. Marine Corps was the last redoubt in the battle for the soul of America, in my opinion. The other services appeared to welcome the radical changes brought about in the wake of Barack Obama's Executive Order 15383, establishing a coordinated government-wide initiative to promote diversity and inclusion in the federal workforce. Now, we know what diversity and inclusion mean. They are not nice terms. And then EO 13672, further amendments to that executive order, and Executive Order 11246, equal employment opportunity. Military standards in the Army, Navy, and Air Force were revised to accommodate the new generation of warriors, quote unquote, warriors. However, the Marines held firm, at least for a while, by resisting social engineering efforts that were ultimately aimed at undermining combat effectiveness and efficiency of the Corps by the worst Secretary of the Navy ever, Ray Mabus. And I thought Elmo Zumwalt was the worst, but Mabus is worse than Zumwalt was. Joe Biden doubled down on Barack Obama by issuing his own LGBTQ-related executive order on preventing and combating discrimination on the basis of gender identity or sexual orientation. Now, we know what gender means. It doesn't mean sex, right? On his first official day in office back in January, quote, bureaucratic efficiency being an oxymoron, with the release of the below administrative message last week, it would appear that the Marines have surrendered to the demands of the LGBTQ activists by announcing that, quote, Marines with a diagnosis of gender dysphoria by a military medical provider or confirmed by a military medical provider will receive appropriate medical care and treatment, including the development and execution of a treatment plan associated with the Marines' gender transition. Yeah. Without putting up a fight or even making a whimper. It even gotten to the Marines. And here's the text of that order. Marines with a diagnosis of gender dysphoria and I pretty much read that. The military medical provider in consultation with the Marine and Transgender Care Team. The Marine and the Transgender Care Team. How would you like to do? Were you in the Marines, Herman? Yeah, I was in. What was your job in the Marines? Well, I was in the Transgender Care Team. Yeah. And we'll develop a medical treatment plan associated with the Marines' gender transition. Wow. The commander will approve the timing of the treatment plan that maintains military readiness by minimizing impacts on the mission. The Marine will notify the commander of any change to an approved medical plan and the projected schedule for such treatment. When gender transition is complete, as determined by a military medical provider, the Marine's gender marker will be changed in the Marine Corps Total Force System, which then updates the Defense Enrollment Eligibility Reporting System, which people in the military refer to DEERS. All Marines must be treated with dignity and respect. Well, that's something new. No Marines solely on the basis of their gender identity will be involuntarily separated, delighted, and on and on and on. And more of this stuff. So it's a long, long order. Treatment and care and transgender care teams versus discharge, all at taxpayer expense. Color me an old fossil, Stan says. I guess color me an old fossil. The Democrats are big on science, for example, using the supposedly settled science, another oxymoron. Science is never settled. Science is not a destination, it's a process, it's a route to be pursued. What the hell? The Democrats are big on science, as you were, using the settled science of climate change to drive public policy on their green energy initiatives. Never mind the science involved in examining the economic impact of those policies on real Americans. And they are big on science related to the wearing of masks, too, aren't they? They're all chasing their tails on that one with the CDC's latest finger-to-the-wind guidance. But the science served there in the Chi-Com's purpose of shutting down the economy and getting rid of the orange-haired nemesis, Donald Trump. But where are the studies that would indicate gender dysphoria policies and other such claptrap will result in improvements in the military's ability, and here's the key words, the military's ability to break things and kill people. Break things and kill people, which is ultimately what the military provides in the way of blunt instrument force in the defense of the Republic. There are none, of course. We're all supposed to take it on faith that social engineering will be to our collective benefit. Our strength is our diversity, and will improve the military's warfighting capabilities because, you know, diversity. Except that it's not the ultimate purpose of Joe Biden's America's last policy. He and they are not interested in improvements. To the contrary, they understand quite well the ultimate effects of left-wing social engineering in the military services, and those effects will be dire to our collective national security, just as they intended from the beginning. Imagine the training time that will be sacrificed on the altar of policies like the one trumpeted in the above Marine admin message. The negative impacts of these social engineering experiments on U.S. military readiness, combat effectiveness, unit cohesion, and morale cannot be measured at this point. But one thing can be certain, that the Chinese People's Liberation Army and Russian military are laughing themselves silly at this malarkey. Do you suppose they will be at all concerned about dignity and respect on the future battlefield, let alone the Geneva Conventions? So this witnessed the ongoing and destruction into PC hell of our beloved Marine Corps. Some of them would love to be recalled to active duty and help square away the Corps too, if only they could. Yeah, this is sad, and it's been going on for a while. You know, the Marines have what's called boot camp, and that's what turns a bunch of rabble of civilians into Marines. And I don't know how long it is. It was 15 weeks when I was in. And outside of combat, it's probably the hardest thing a person will ever do. And that's the difference between civilians and Marines. Well, we've had women in the Marine Corps wearing the Marine Corps uniform since World War II. But they were in a separate classification. They were women Marines, they weren't Marines. In 1972, we crossed a bridge and we integrated all of those women's branches into the regular services. So we used to have WAC, Women's Army Corps, WAVES, I don't remember what that stood for, but that was females in the Navy, etc. And then we used to have BAMs. That was women in the Marine Corps, but I better not tell you what BAM stands for. I might make someone mad. Yeah. But then they were all bred in the Marine Corps. But you know, women weren't depended upon to go out and break things and kill people, like Marines do. So gradually that changed. So up until a few years ago, women Marines did go through boot camp. They had a boot camp. Their boot camp was at Parris Island. So there were four recruit battalions at Parris Island, 3 for men, 1 for women. So the women trained there, but they had their own training. Well, they've got it down to the point now where there are female and male companies and battalions, and I think by the end of next year, each company will have male and female Marines.
Like combined or segregated?
Combined. Yeah.
Interesting.
You can imagine how that's going to work. And, you know, the physical part of it, I don't think it's gotten any easier since my time. Physical part of it was tough for your average fit male. Let's break here for the home stretch. I'm going to go to Churchill Downs.
You dread waiting in those long, inconvenient lines? That's why you won't find them at Bank Pacific. Go back to our pre-COVID Monday to Saturday hours with all of our branches open. You know, that where others put branches, we place roots thing. And if you don't want to come to the bank, we have MyCloud Banking through which you can go to the bank on any of your devices, including through our new cool mobile banking platform with remote capture so you can deposit checks from anywhere. Offline, online, no line. Bank Pacific. Where others put branches, we place roots and rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Need to finish the job or start one the right way? Get the right stuff at East West Rental Center. You can switch to easy mode using industrial strength equipment. With years of experience helping builders, East West Rental gives you exactly what you need. Tools for landscaping, concrete, lifts, trucks, tables, tents, chairs, water blasters, excavators, forklifts, air compressors, and more. Call East West Rental Center at 646-1463 or visit them in Upper Tumont. Open Monday to Saturday from 7 to 5, Sundays 8 to 5.
Yeah, so there we are, Churchill Downs for the home stretch, and I'm reminiscing about my boot camp days. It was over 60 years ago, but believe me, it's something you don't forget very easily. And at least in those days, boot camp was tough for a reasonably fit man. The standards were high, the work was hard, it was tough. Now, maybe if you took a random sample of 18, 19, 20-year-old females, out of 500, you could have found one that might have been able to make it through that boot camp and those standards. Maybe you could have, maybe not. But the average Susie or Sally would not have made it through the first day. It's unfortunate, but that's reality. And I have my own gender bias. Women, as a general principle, are not usually as apt and willing to break things and kill people as men are. And, there's an evolutionary reason for this, Men are bigger, stronger, faster than women. Women are the ones that bear children. So going way, way back, the women stayed in the cave, raised the children, socialized with the other women, etc. And the man was out running around trying to chase down dinner for the whole family and trying just as hard to not be the dinner for something else. That's the way we started out. And the men who were successful at that were able to reproduce. The ones that weren't were weeded out of the gene pool. Natural selection. So we wound up with two sexes that were not the same at all. And it's good. They're complementary. And, of course, a man and a woman are necessary to produce more humans. So we've just turned our back on all of this stuff now. Even the Marine Corps, it's just, nothing is sacred anymore. No place is safe from these woke folks. And I think the only thing we can do is just fight wokeism wherever we see it. I'm tempted to, if I could get on a plane, to go down to San Diego and I don't know what I do when I got there, but I just feel like I should do something. Okay, I've got the most dangerous man in the room back on the Ferris wheel. There he is, our Carl.
Hey, Bob, good afternoon again. I keep vowing not to call back, but you always talk about so many interesting things. If you really want to see how pathetic we look, our military recruitment, there is a video on YouTube. I think it goes under the name Russian versus, or VS, Chinese versus American recruitment ads. And it runs first Chinese. Yeah, it was Chinese first, then the Russian recruitment ad, and last of all, the American ads. And if you want to see how pathetic we look, just watch that, and you will just shake your head. It's just pathetic. We really look terrible. The Chinese and the Russian military leaders are laughing their heads off at us.
We used to have a recruitment poster that had a Marine decked out in dress blues, really sharp, right? And the sign, or the legend on the sign was, Marine Corps builds men. But you can't say that anymore. Now you have to say something like, Marine Corps builds people of, I was going to say both genders, but even that wouldn't be correct. Marine Corps builds people of all genders. Yeah.
Well, that is the strategy, is to disintegrate America from within, and this is what is happening.
Yeah, it's working.
In the New Green Deal, green industry front, we're shutting down our coal plants. China is ramping up. They're building coal plants at breakneck pace and just laughing their heads off. One thing I'd like to ask you before I hang up is, I know the Israeli army has men and women. I'm wondering how they do their training, because the Israeli women are really tough.
Well, the Israeli army doesn't rely so heavily on women anymore. There was a time when they just had a people shortage in Israel, and they had to press everybody into the military that they could get their hands on, but they don't rely that heavily on women anymore.
Huh. Okay, well, thank you for enlightening me on that. I was just wondering what the story was, because I know, well, at least at one time they were composed a very important part of the Israeli army.
Right.
Anyway, Bob, we'll look forward to seeing you on Monday. I'll keep listening.
Okay, Carl. See you then.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so let's see. I got, 2 minutes before we got to go into hibernation again? Let me see what I got on Facebook here. Jose Martinez says, even if there are other examples of Navy is bad, they weren't included in Resolution 56, right?
It goes back to nobody addresses the resolution. They just want to address how bad everything is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no one saw fit to take my letter that ran in both papers and to write a contra letter to the editor like Mike Brown did as far as Paul Zerzan. It's much easier and much more fun to grumble about racism. And I suppose since I defended the Navy, or I'm not defended the Navy, but criticize those who would slander it, I am automatically a racist.
And you're also a former Marine.
Yeah, Marine. Just punching all those tickets.
You're from Wisconsin.
Yeah. All of those things. Okay, well, it's going to be tough, but Jose and I will be back in 70 hours. We'll be back 1600 on Monday. We'll be thinking of you throughout the entire weekend. See you on Monday.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Threats in Gaza. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. In the only hours-old agreement between Hamas and Israel to pause hostilities.
Israeli officials say this was a deal brokered by the Egyptians, and it includes no preconditions. The question now is whether or not this ceasefire will hold. Both sides are extremely skeptical right now and making threats against the other. We've seen the Israeli military echelon basically saying if there are more rockets, there will be a forceful response.
Fox's Trey Yingst, a Hamas spokesman, says Prime Minister Netanyahu and the world need to know we have our fingers on the trigger. Speaking at the White House, President Biden said the U.S. will work with the UN and other countries
to provide rapid humanitarian assistance and to marshal international support for the people of Gaza and the Gaza reconstruction efforts.
The president also said the U.S. will help Israel replenish its supply of interceptor missiles used in its Iron Dome protection system. Pro-Israeli and pro-Palestinian protesters skirmished in New York City last night. The NYPD says commercial fireworks were thrown from a car and one person suffered burns. The House has passed by just a single vote margin a bill to spend an additional $1.9 billion on Capitol security. Several members of the so-called squad broke with Democrat leadership and voted no, calling it funding for a broken policing system. Maryland has become the latest state to incentivize vaccinations. The state's lottery will award a daily $40,000 prize for 40 days starting next week, and then
on the 4th of July, a final drawing will be held to award one lucky vaccinated Marylander a grand prize of $400,000. So it's a total of $2 million in prize money for vaccinated Marylanders.
Governor Larry Hogan says only the inoculated are eligible. Wall Street, the Dow ends a three-day losing streak yesterday, closing 188 points higher. Asian stock markets closing Friday mixed. America is listening to Fox News.
Hey, it's Brett Larson, inviting you to download and listen to the new daily Fox on Tech podcast. There's part of a colorful late 90s